the US Vice-President Kamala Harris has said that people in the Gaza Strip are starving and has called on Israel to do more to increase the flow of aid into the territory. She said that desperate people seeking food have been met with gunfire and chaos. Here's what the Vice-President said.
They must open new border crossings. They must not impose any unnecessary restrictions on the delivery of aid. They must ensure humanitarian personnel, sites, and convoys are not targeted. And they must work to restore basic services and promote order in Gaza so more food, water, and fuel can reach those in need.
The US Vice President also said Hamas should accept a 6-week ceasefire deal being discussed with Israel that would secure the release of hostages kidnapped.
Given the immense scale of suffering in Gaza, there must be an immediate ceasefire. For at least the next 6 weeks, which is what is currently on the table. This will get the hostages out and get a significant amount of aid in. This would allow us to build something more enduring, to ensure Israel is secure, and to respect the right of the Palestinian people to dignity, freedom, and self-determination. Hamas claims it wants a ceasefire. Well, there is a deal on the table. And as we have said, Hamas needs to agree to that deal. Let's get a ceasefire. Let's reunite the hostages with their families. And let's provide immediate relief to the people of Gaza.
But negotiations for that ceasefire that Kamala Harris has called for have hit a major roadblock. Members of Hamas are in Cairo alongside international mediators. But Israel says it won't attend the meeting until Hamas provides it with a list of hostages still alive. Hamas took 253 hostages when gunmen launched an attack on October the 7th. It says it can't provide the information because of Israel's continuing bombardment and blockade of Gaza, saying it was impossible to collect a list of names because the hostages are dispersed among different Palestinian groups and in different areas of the Gaza Strip. Well, our senior international correspondent Orla Guerin sent this report from Tel Aviv and a warning that you may find some of the images in her report upsetting.
A truce can't come soon enough. In Rafah, another day of harrowing loss. Palestinians mourn for 20 members of the Abu Ansa family, killed in their beds by an Israeli airstrike, according to hospital officials and Gaza's civil defence. Among the dead, 5-month-old twins, as old as the war. Naeem and Wissam laid down gently with their relatives. Their mother, Rania, spent 10 years trying to have them and endured 3 rounds of IVF. Now all she can cradle is their baby clothes. I gave birth during the war, she says. It started on Saturday. I gave birth the next Friday. I didn't get enough of them. I swear, I didn't get enough. I have no one else, she says. They've gone with their father. We were sleeping, I swear. Israel continues to say it takes feasible precautions to lessen civilian harm. There were about 35 people in the house, says Farouk Abu Anza. Most of them children. There were no fighters. The house collapsed on them, 3 or 4 stories. In Israel too, families in anguish. Their loved ones trapped in tunnels in Gaza.
They need to be released now.
They've been pleading with their government to do a deal to bring the hostages back home.
Our offer is a very warm person. You can see his smile. He's a family person. He has 4 children, lovely children.
How hard is this time for the families? This wait must seem endless.
It's like a hell, you know. We are in some of a loop since the October 7th. We are living this day every day again and again. We have only one goal all these days, to bring him back alive to his family, to his children. This is the only thing that matters.
But there will be no homecoming for Offer or any of the hostages without a ceasefire. And no respite for mothers like Rania burying their children in Gaza. Orla Guerin, BBC News, Tel Aviv.
Well, let's go live to our Middle East correspondent Yolanel in Jerusalem. I wonder if we can start with those comments from the US Vice President. They seem quite strong, calling it a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza and again calling for that immediate ceasefire.
Indeed, and it seems like some of the strongest comments we've had yet from a top US political leader. Remember, of course, that the US is Israel's strongest international ally. It shielded it repeatedly at the UN Security Council from calls there for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. It's a donor to Israel, gives billions of dollars in military aid and in other assistance to Israel. But you sense there has been growing frustration, particularly at the situation when it comes to aid, the humanitarian situation. It was called a humanitarian catastrophe by Kamala Harris when she was speaking in Alabama. And she said that there is now this need for an immediate ceasefire, meaning the 6-week truce deal that is currently on the table in order to increase the amount of aid going in. She talked about how people in Gaza were starving, and that deal also being needed in order to get Israel's hostages out.
When we come to those ceasefire talks, Hamas says it can't provide the list of hostages that Israel says that it wants. So is there any way forward with the two sides seemingly far apart?
I mean, it does look like a very serious block, and you can imagine that the mediators, those with leverage here, are really working behind the scenes to see what they can do. Hopes have really risen over the past week that there could be some kind of a breakthrough after talks took place in Paris on a ceasefire deal that would see this truce taking place through the Islamic holy month of Ramadan, which is due to begin in about a week from now. There are now talks taking place in Egypt. Of course, Qatar and Egypt are key mediators in this deal. A Hamas delegation is understood to be there, but we understand that Israel has not sent its delegation. The reports in Israeli media, quoting different Israeli officials, say that they have not received any official response from Hamas to that Paris framework deal, that they want this full list of the surviving hostages, with more than 130 hostages still unaccounted for, believed to be held in Gaza, and that would help them to lock down the number of Palestinian prisoners that would be expected to be released from Israeli jails in exchange for the hostages being freed. Now, then we had this senior Hamas official, Dr. Bassem Naim, based in Turkey, who told the BBC that really a ceasefire is what is needed in order to be able to provide that data. He said that it's practically impossible to work out who is alive because of the ongoing Israeli bombardment of Gaza, and said that there are different groups in different areas who are still holding these hostages.
And briefly, Benny Gantz, who's an influential member of the War Cabinet, is in the US. What's he doing there? And I understand it is causing some controversy in Israel itself.
Indeed, and that gives us an idea of just how deep the domestic divisions are when it comes to this issue about what kind of deals should be done. So Benny Gantz is somebody who entered into the War Cabinet after the events of the 7th of October. He was formerly a prominent opposition leader and critic of the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, but he said he was putting his country first. He's somebody who wanted to use his experience as a former leader of the Israeli Defense Forces, and there has been signs of increasing disagreement between him and Mr. Netanyahu in the war cabinet in recent days. And it was without Mr. Netanyahu's previous agreement, it seems that he went to Washington. He took up this invitation. He's going to meet the Vice-President Kamala Harris and talk about the situation there. At the same time, we've also had over the last couple of days really big demonstrations taking place with the hostages' families. They get a lot of public support in Israel and are really voicing their discontent, their anger with the government over its failure to deliver a new hostage deal.
Yolan El, our Middle East correspondent in Jerusalem, thank you very much.